Haunted houses. No matter where you go in the world, everyone has one. From Athens to Zimbabwe, there isn't a city, town, or hamlet that doesn't have some old mansion that just begs to be left alone. As children, they scare us. As teenagers, they intrigue. And as skeptical adults, they entertain or make us chuckle at the madness of the idea of the whole affair. Hello, I am author and paranormal investigator Donald Allen Kirch, and this is Stranger Than Fiction.
Forget the world you know. Enter a bizarre dimension where the strange and unusual guide your imagination towards the unimaginable. Life is stranger than fiction in these true stories, where the ordinary is replaced with the extraordinary. Explore strange legends, weird myths, and odd folklore. The facts are laid before you to examine. You're invited to draw your own conclusions on these true stories of the paranormal.
This week's episode will be a little different. This one's more personal. As I have stated in the past episodes, I am a paranormal investigator. Not too fancy, I don't have several books on this subject, nor do I star in my own TV series. I thought that I would share with you a personal episode from my case files, one that when I had closed it, it changed my life forever. Join me now on a trip to a tiny city in the state of Kansas called Atchison. There we will stop off at a humble house haunted by a little girl named Sallie. The whole thing started out as an idea for a book. Since the publication of my novel, Manchester House, back in November of 2009, I have received a lot of compliments, some conservative praisings, and one or two WTFs. I appreciate all of them, even the negatives. In all things we learn by doing. However, this book was an important exception to me. As I stated earlier, it was inspired by a true event. In short, I was attacked by a ghost. Back in 2004, I knew a group of individuals who wished to get together and form a production company. Their goal was to create low-budget documentaries which they hoped to feature on an online website. They all seemed passionate and willing enough to do the incredible task ahead of them, so I joined as a creative consultant. It was a slow summer, and frankly, I had nothing better to do. While at one board meeting, blowing spit bubbles of boredom, someone suggested that we do a documentary on haunted houses. Suddenly, my ears perked up and my spit bubbles ran dry. As a child, I loved to watch the TV series In Search Of. Some of the best episodes that they had were subjects on ghost haunted houses and curses. I have a giant sweet tooth for this stuff, and I knew that the suggestion that they made was gold. I also remember one of the researchers from that television series. His name was Hans Holzer. Hans Holzer had more degrees than a thermometer. He specialized in paranormal studies and was quite intelligent and timid-looking. I watched this guy on TV carrying an old-fashioned cassette recorder and a cheesy microphone, claiming to be chasing ghosts. Now, as a kid, I bought it. I ate it up like candy. He struck an everlasting and positive chord in my early memory. In fact, I named one of my main characters in Manchester House after him in his honor. Having explained to the entire crew that I knew something of the paranormal, I suggested we scope out Atchison, Kansas, not too far from Kansas City, Missouri, where we all lived. Now, Atchison, Kansas was once an important hub in the American industrial empire. It was the starting place for the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad companies. It was also the hometown of Amelia Earhart, the famous female aviator. Also, this small hamlet of a Kansas town had yet another important honor. It was considered the most haunted town in Kansas. Okay, we agreed. Atchison would be the setting place for our documentary. Several members of the crew started to investigate, contact, and scout out the town. While doing this, we came across some incredible luck. The owner of the Sallie House was going to allow us the opportunity to stay 2 weekends alone within the residence. And he was going to do it for free. The Sallie House is a two-story post-Civil War home built in the 1890s and had been featured on the Fox television series Sighting and the Learning Channel's documentary Haunted Town. The story behind the house is not a happy one. In the late 19th century, the home was owned by a medical practitioner who had also been the mayor of Atchison. As was the practice of the time, he had live-in servants. One was an attractive black woman, whose name has been lost to time. In short, she and the doctor had an affair, and from that affair, Sallie was born. Sallie lived in the house, and she, her origins, and her mother's affair were closely guarded secrets. It would not have served the doctor any for those amongst him or his peers to learn that he had fathered a black child. Again, this was not an enlightened time, and color was an important gauge upon the social ladder. In any case, Sallie ended up having trouble with her appendix. As the story goes, the doctor, Sallie's father, had a drinking problem. And, upon the night in question, the man had been deep within his cups. Solidly drunk, the man inadvertently allowed his daughter to die upon the operating table, and was never held responsible for the act. In the eyes of the times, it was just the death of another servant's child. Sallie, according to legend, was buried in a nameless grave, or within the confines of the doctor's basement. Either fact is impossible to prove. As with Sallie's mother, her final fate has been lost within the passage of time. She simply disappeared. As for trying to prove where Sallie was officially buried, that would be quite impossible. Note, several psychics have claimed that Sallie has a grave, and that site has been examined, but to no apparent conclusion. Upon her death, Sallie declared war on all male occupants of her house. In August of 2004, we ventured into this house, never fully seeing the danger we were putting ourselves into. Now, before this episode, I had always been a believer in the afterlife. However, time, taking her course upon an open mind and an adult heart, I became a skeptic. I still believe, mind you, but I also believed in the human ability to create fraud. One of my favorite quotes: "If it's put on a t-shirt and makes money, it will never go away." Two great examples: Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. Next to Elvis, the biggest tourist traps in the world. So, as a skeptic, I was chosen to be the member of the crew who would take the notes. The owner of the Sallie House informed us that he was preparing the home for a new client. The house was a rental property and was in between residents, so it was totally empty. So we would not be held back by manners or film restrictions. In short, we had full reign. Upon our entrance, things turned weird. A cameraman and a non-believer instantly started to become sick. Vomiting several times, he left. The man never again set foot in that house. To this day, we don't know what he saw, heard, or experienced. He simply will not talk about it. Instantly, our digital cameras started to have problems. Now, these were not cheap cameras. One was a $5,000 camera, and it was state-of-the-art. It was one of those models that was used on the filming of 28 Days. It was a perfect camera. A photographer's flash wouldn't work, and batteries drained like there was no tomorrow. All our hard work was starting to fail, and it looked like it was a waste of time for us to even be there. Luckily, our two backup cameras still worked. Heading down to the home's basement, we decided to do some filming there. The basement of the Sallie House is quite ordinary. It's consisted of a long wooden staircase, furnace, and riverbed rock walls. Now there's a gaping hole that's right behind the furnace of the Sallie House, and inside that gaping hole there's mounds of dirt and a whole lot of wood. Reason being there, we have no idea. Now there was also something else. Namely, there was a black pentagram. Someone, we don't know who, had drawn a black pentagram upon the floor directly in front of the furnace. This, I have to say, did freak me out. One of the cameramen decided to try our new night vision camera filter. We turned off all the lights. The cameraman started his filming. Within, I'd say, maybe 30 seconds of turning off all the lights, a scream was heard. Flipping the basement lights back on, we discovered that one of our team was attacked by a brick. That's right, a brick. In point of fact, there are no bricks in the basement of the Sallie House, other than those in the chimney. As mentioned, the walls are constructed of riverbed rock. At first, we all took the attack as a kind of April Fool's joke. What filming crew does not have a practical joker in their midst? So, the lights went out again, and the bricks continued to fly. All in all, 6. Each victim hit was a male within our group. Now, even in the pitch dark, if somebody was throwing a brick, how could they tell who they were hitting, male or female? Granted, there's a 50-50 chance the person you're hitting is going to be male or female. Only the men were attacked. Only the men were injured. I had been personally grazed by a brick that hit me in my right kidney area. Then came my attack. As we continued our investigation, I was taking notes in the hallway of the second floor, between the bathroom and the nursery. I had come to the conclusion while in the basement that there was something genuine about this haunting, and was writing this in my notes. I had also made personal observation that the man controlling the EMF reader wasn't doing a good job. In point of fact, I thought he was faking most of the reactions that we were getting. I remember writing, "This guy with the EMF device, is he faking?" I wrote that in my notebook. When upon heading down the main staircase, I felt something. As I remember, I felt a pair of small hands, like those of a child, taking hold of my ankles, and a rather adult pair of hands grabbing me at the shoulders. The adult hands felt like those belonging to a woman. My pen stopped in mid-sentence. My eyes, I'm sure, opened wide. And my world changed. All at once, the child's hands pulled my feet off the steps, and the adult hands upon my shoulders pushed. If it had not been for my instinct and reaction to place my right hand against the staircase wall and my left against the railing, I'm sure that I would have fallen down the stairs, breaking my neck. Now, this staircase was indeed long enough and deep enough to cause serious injury. I'm not one for delusional fantasies. I create too many on my own and need little help. This happened. I was attacked, and until the day I pass, I will state this for the record. My experience within the Sallie House wasn't the first. There had been a couple who had lived there before, and who came to know the full wrath of the ghost of little Sallie. They were Tony and Deborah Pickman. As their story goes, they were recently married and went looking to find a good home to start a family with. Deborah was expecting her first child, and things were looking up for the two of them. Fate one day brought them to 508 North 2nd Street. Tony and Deborah moved in on December 31st, 1992. Now, unlike other hauntings, like the Amityville Horror, there were no stories of murders or clues whatsoever of trouble with this house. Both rented the property without knowing that it would change their lives forever. Life proceeded as normally as it could. Each were busy trying to make ends meet, live their lives, and prepare for the happy day when the baby would be born. No sign of paranormal activity at all. Tony and Deborah both came from Catholic backgrounds. Neither felt at odds with the house. They were both on records for saying that it was a happy house. The event started innocently enough. TV sets were turned off and on for no apparent reason. Electric clocks and timers would go amok. Appliances in the kitchen would come to life. And if that were not enough, candles arranged throughout the house would suddenly light. Like all couples, Deborah and Tony took pictures, displaying them proudly on the walls of their home. Both would sometimes find these pictures turned upside down, or worse, days after the pictures were developed. Strange images would make themselves known. Haunting shapes of black blobs so weird, no one could even begin to identify them. One picture in particular frightened me upon seeing it. It was a picture taken at the top of the long staircase I had my encounter upon. In this picture, a dark shadow could be seen, almost at the very spot that I had been attacked. At first, upon realizing that their home was haunted, neither Tony or Deborah knew what to do. Eventually, they took their plight to the producers of Sightings, a TV series of the paranormal which had been seen on Fox and later on the Sci-Fi Channel. Identities were kept secret at first, and the whole event was called the Heartland Haunting. It was only later that Tony and Deborah had the courage to come forward to let people know who they were. Sallie's hatred for men showed a dark and ugly side when dealing with Tony Pickman. The man had been attacked by her upon several occasions, scratching him across his back, front torso, arms, and face. Once, while on an episode of Sightings, he had been scratched several times, and witnesses confessed to it on a live chat room forum. They all stated for the record that it happened right before their eyes. Sallie meant business. She wanted them to leave. The Pickmans couldn't take it anymore and soon moved out. Both have recorded their experiences and, like the Lutzes, have written books on the subject, hoping to help those faced with similar circumstances. Occasionally, when she can, Deborah Pickman still visits her old home, trying to discover a means to help Sallie gain some spiritual rest, or at the least seek answers from her. Sallie, however, isn't talking. There was something within the confines of that small Kansas house that does not want people there. If it is the child ghost known as Sallie, she got her wish. Upon being attacked, and having felt a level of personal horror I have never felt before, I left. I had people in our group tell me later that it appeared that I had been lifted from the stairs and thrown from my footing. I thank God that I had the presence of mind, or instinct at least, to take some kind of action. To paraphrase a poetic saying, there are more things in both heaven and earth that are beyond our dreams or thoughts. If you ever find yourself in the town of Atchison, Kansas, why not take a drive down 2nd Street and find out for yourself? Sallie is waiting. She has all the time in the world. Now, I apologize if some of this episode seems like it was done with a slight bit of tongue-in-cheek. But simply put, sharing this event is not easy for me. I still find myself questioning what had happened. It hasn't curbed my curiosity in the paranormal, not by no means, but it has made me more of a believer. I sympathize with people who try to share their paranormal activity with the general audience and are looked at as being either insane or needing medical help of some kind. When I tried to share this with close friends of mine and what had happened to me, I got the same feeling that the Lutzes perhaps received after they'd written their book, or the Pickmans for that matter. It's not an easy thing to go up and tell people that monsters exist, especially in the world where we tell our children that they don't. Now, if you would like to see my work, go to my website at donaldallenkirch.com. That's Donald Allen, A-L-L-E-N, Kirch, K-I-R-C-H.com. One word, donaldallenkirch.com. It would be an honor to entertain you. So, this is Donald Allen Kirch, wishing you unpleasant dreams. Good night.